Hello, my name is Olive Corby. This year I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Nelson in the psychology department at Winthrop, and we examined how personality may impact the ability to effectively manage negative emotion after recalling a past trauma. Research has revealed that many college students have experienced trauma prior to entering college. Some of these students have effective coping strategies, and some do not. An important aspect of coping that we wanted to study is the ability to manage negative emotions. Past research has identified several different strategies that people may utilize to manage their emotions, but one of the most effective strategies is called reappraisal. Reappraisal involves reinterpreting an upsetting event in a way that alters its emotional impact. This can help people downregulate negative emotions like anger or sadness. Although effective, not everyone uses reappraisal when confronted with negative emotions, as it requires skill and motivation and effort. But we wondered whether specific personality tendencies would impact the extent to which individuals are able to effectively leverage reappraisal. In order to test this research question, we utilized the Big Five inventory as a means of assessing personality differences. This instrument is based on the Big Five factors model of personality, which conceptualizes personality according to 5 general factors: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. This method for measuring personality is widely used in contemporary personality research and has been shown to have reliability and validity across cultures and languages. We reasoned that 3 of the 5 factors seem particularly relevant to effective emotion regulation. First, we hypothesized those high in openness would be better able to effectively leverage reappraisal because of their ability to see different perspectives, which may assist in seeing some good in even a traumatic event. Since doing this type of reinterpretation is not necessarily natural, our second hypothesis was scoring high in conscientiousness would facilitate reappraisal because these individuals are willing to put forth the deliberate thought that is needed to reinterpret events. And finally, we hypothesized that reappraisal would be especially difficult for those high in neuroticism. Those who score high in neuroticism are often focused on their own negative emotions and are low in optimism. We thought this would interfere with reappraisal, which requires a belief that negative emotions are controllable. We recruited 105 undergraduates to participate in our study from classrooms on Winthrop's campus. We asked them to write about their most stressful or traumatic past experience. A summary of the types of trauma students wrote about is depicted in this graph. As you can see, a large number of students wrote about the death of a close friend or family member, and another large group wrote about different types of assault, both violent and sexual. Other common traumas involved accidents, injuries, and witnessing violence. After writing about the past traumatic event, our participants were randomly assigned to either a control condition or a reappraisal condition. The reappraisal instructions were to think about and then write about possible positive effects of the recalled event. Examples were given such as learning new things, developing new relationships, or becoming more resilient. They then rated the extent to which they were feeling a series of negative and positive emotions such as hope, anger, optimism, or sadness. Next, participants responded to items from the Big Five inventory. We focused on subscales that measured openness, conscientiousness, and neuroticism. Participants also responded to 2 measures of trait-like emotion regulation. First, they completed the 9 subscales of the Cognitive Emotion Regulation Questionnaire, short form, which measures the extent to which individuals consistently use different emotion regulation strategies, both healthy and unhealthy. For example, a healthy strategy could be refocus on planning, or thinking about what steps to take and how to handle the negative event, while unhealthy strategies could be blaming self and others. We also utilized another trait-like measure of emotion regulation, called the Emotion Regulation Questionnaire, which measures the extent to which individuals consistently use reappraisal to manage their emotions and also their tendency to use suppression, which involves efforts to not express emotion. Finally, they responded to demographic questions. To test our primary hypotheses, we conducted a series of 2x2 between subjects ANOVAs, which revealed that, as predicted, those high in openness had lower negative affect in the reappraisal condition compared to those in the control condition. In contrast, no difference in negative affect were found as a function of experimental condition for those low in openness. So, reappraisal attempts were effective for those high in openness, but didn't seem to have any benefit for those low in openness. Also, as predicted, those high in conscientiousness had lower negative affect in the reappraisal condition compared to the control condition. In contrast, no differences in negative affect were found across conditions for those low in conscientiousness. Essentially, reappraisal attempts were effective for those high in conscientiousness, but didn't prove beneficial for those low in conscientiousness. And finally, as predicted, those low in neuroticism had lower negative affect in the reappraisal condition than those in the control condition. In contrast, no differences in negative affect were found across experimental conditions for those high in neuroticism. Here we see that reappraisal attempts were effective for those low in neuroticism, but didn't seem to help those high in neuroticism. Exploratory analysis did not yield any significant differences of conditions on positive affect. In addition to testing our experimental research questions, we also examined correlations between the big 5 personality factors and trait-like tendencies to use different emotion regulation strategies. We found that openness to experience was positively correlated to several healthy strategies, such as the trait-like tendency to use reappraisal, as well as trait-like tendencies of planning. We also found that conscientiousness is positively correlated with the healthy trait-like tendency of planning, of positive reappraisal, and negatively correlated to the unhealthy trait-like tendency to catastrophize, or make things bigger than they need to be. Finally, we also found that neuroticism is positively correlated to unhealthy trait-like tendencies of self-blame and catastrophizing, and is negatively correlated to the reappraisal trait and healthy trait-like tendencies such as planning. These correlations are consistent with the findings from the experimental portion of our studies. To summarize our findings, we tested the relationship between personality traits and the ability to effectively leverage emotion regulation after recall of a traumatic memory. As expected, we found that persons high in openness to experience, persons high in conscientiousness, and those low in neuroticism were most able to effectively leverage reappraisal, and therefore reported less negative affect after recalling a past trauma. We also found correlations between the big 5 personality factors and trait-like tendencies to use different emotion regulation strategies. Our findings contribute to a greater understanding of individual differences in responses to trauma. The extent to which an individual is able to adapt and cope with trauma depends in part on their ability to manage negative emotions. Our findings also suggest that emotion regulation is not one size fits all, and different strategies will work better or worse depending on individual differences, such as personality. Future research should investigate different emotion regulation strategies that may be more effective for persons high in neuroticism, low in openness, and low in conscientiousness, since reappraisal seems to be difficult for individuals with these trait tendencies. Understanding how different types of emotion regulation may impact individuals is extremely important because managing negative emotions is imperative for psychological well-being. Our research and future research examining personality and emotion regulation could possibly be helpful in informing interventions designed to improve coping with trauma. I would like to thank my faculty mentor, Dr. Nelson, for her kindness, guidance, and support during the course of this project, as well as all of the Winthrop professors who allowed me to conduct my study in their classrooms. I would also like to thank the Winthrop McNair Scholar Program for allowing me the opportunity to participate in research that has impacted my life academically and personally. Here you see my selected references. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions.